You ready?
Okay, Commissioners, we are now live on YouTube for the Berrien County Administration Committee virtual meeting due to COVID-19. And the meeting's called to order, and so we'll go with the roll call, please, Jennifer.
Curran,
I am here.
Majerick,
I'm here.
Hugel,
Here.
Meek.
I'm here.
We have 4 here.
Okay, thank you, Madam Clerk. Next item of business is approval of the administrative minutes from March 19th of 2020. Do I have a motion?
I Don make the motion for approval of the minute.
Michael Majerick, second.
Okay, have a motion and second. Is there any discussion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
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 All
We have to
opposed?
do a roll call because we're online.
Oh, I'm my bad. Go ahead.
Okay.
Curran,
Sure, yes.
Majerick,
Yes.
Hugel,
Yes.
Meeks.
Yes.
We have 4 yeas.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Okay, next item is friend of the court, compliment change, and we have Tom Watson present. And one of the reasons why Tom is here is I sat in on the PHSC meeting this morning, and Tom did a very good job of explaining the compliment change that was brought to PHSC. And so I asked him to answer any questions that this committee may have and to explain a little bit on the compliment change. So good morning, Tom, and or good afternoon, Tom, and welcome.
Very good. Good afternoon, Commissioners. I appreciate the opportunity. It seems like it's been quite a while since at least I've had an opportunity to address the committee, and so I appreciate that for this afternoon. As Commissioner Curran mentioned, this morning I had the opportunity to present an item that we've actually spent a great deal of time on in the front of the court. And I want to provide you a summary of that information. Normally, and I think Shelley Jasper this morning mentioned it, Brian I think also mentioned it, you know, clearly this has changed a lot of things. COVID-19 has changed our methodology of operation. Certainly I would have come to all of you initially. We kind of have it a little bit backwards today, but would have come to you initially with this, and then obviously it would have moved on to the Personnel and Human Services Committee. So if you bear with me, and again, from my behalf, I guess I apologize, although I truly had nothing to do with COVID-19, just in case there was a question about that. I wanted to go ahead and give you a little bit of a summarization of what we're talking about here. Back in January of this year, I became aware that our then Enforcement Division Supervisor, Mike Slater, Mike, who had been with us 25 years actually in the front of the court, was intending to retire in May of this year. Mike did retire in May, but at the time of his making that announcement and me taking a look at where our operations were at that time, I think, as it is for all of us, certainly in the court, and I think probably I can say countywide, we all need to take a step back and to take a look at our operations to see how efficient we are, how efficient maybe we could be, opportunity to take a look at what can we do maybe a little bit differently. And so that's exactly what we did. And as I mentioned, that has taken some time. We spent a great deal of time on it. It culminated in a document, which I think you have a copy of now, in a document in May that I provided to Shelley, to Bill Wolf at the time. Matt Elliott also had a copy of it. The upshot of what we're doing is this. We are proposing to eliminate the Enforcement Division supervisor position in the front of the court. Now, that may sound a little bit, maybe draconian, maybe. However, we have taken a hard look at structure of additional offices around the state, not just here in Berrien County, but taking a look at other options that may be out there. And I spent some time with some of my colleagues around the state, some of our life-size offices. There's a lot of similarity between the financial function, accounting function that we perform in our office, and also our enforcement function. Both of those functions have a lot of similarities between the two. We took a look at that and said that based upon an individual that we brought on board last year, some of you may remember when we brought on a new financial division supervisor in our accounting area. Debbie Withers is her name, has been an outstanding hire for the front of the court, and I would submit for the court in general here in Berrien County. Took a look at Debbie's skill set and some of the things that she's been able to accomplish in the accounting area, and we believe that those skills and that skill set that she possesses are transferable to the enforcement division. And so what we're proposing, and I know you have a copy, you were provided a copy of what we propose is our new organizational structure. You also have a copy of our organizational structure that existed back in May, our normal organizational divisional structure. But we propose to have Debbie, that her job description be modified, and that she become the division supervisor over both the enforcement and the accounting divisions. By eliminating the one supervisory position, it gives us flexibility to also provide positions that we believe are desperately needed in the front of the court. One of the things we have in Berrien County, as you're all very much aware, is we're a border county to the state of Indiana. We have a significant amount of intergovernmental cases where individuals move to the state of Indiana, cases where individuals may reside in some other Midwestern states, and not just Midwestern states, but as we all know, society today is pretty mobile as far as they're able to go ahead and move, and we have a lot of our clientele that do exactly that. We have operated for quite some time in what I call a generalist capacity, where we have a little bit of knowledge of intergovernmental court rules and intergovernmental case law. A lot of states that do things differently. We have a significant portion of our caseload, and it continues to grow all the time. We believe it is definitively necessary, and this takes a page right out of some of our other counties that I mentioned that I've looked at. Other counties have individuals that are intergovernmental specialists. They have intergovernmental units whereby there are more than one individual that operate in that particular area. We believe it is absolutely necessary that we have a specialization in the intergovernmental area. And so that is a position that we are recommending that we we're proposing that we have that particular position. This is a position that would need posting upon approval. And as I said, the ability for us to go ahead and fund that position comes from the elimination of the supervisor position, the direct supervisor position in the enforcement area. Everything I'm talking about regarding new positions, that flexibility is created by streamlining our management structure that we have in place. The other position that we propose to go ahead and implement is an assistant supervisor in our enforcement area. Our enforcement area is an area that, as opposed to our financial area, which I'll talk about in just a minute, the enforcement area never had an underlying individual that was an individual that you would say was the source to go to for knowledge and process and procedures things such as that. While we had a supervisor position, we didn't really have an operational expert, if you will, in that particular area. We're proposing that we have an assistant supervisor that would be implemented in the enforcement division. This particular individual would also carry a portion of the caseload. I know one of the things that was brought up this morning in the personnel committee was it seemed like we were maybe reducing what was termed our worker bees. We're not doing that at all. In fact of the matter, we're actually adding individuals that are going to be involved directly in the caseload that we have in the front of the court. I know I've talked with you quite often about our caseload size. We're about 16,000 cases. It's a huge caseload, and I'm certainly very much aware of the individuals that it takes in order to go ahead and manage the caseload that we have. So those are the two new positions, again, that are being funded or recommending from the elimination of the enforcement supervisor position. On top of that, we've been blessed, I will say that, with an individual who's been with us for 28 years. This individual began her career as a co-op student in our accounting division and handling and learning a lot of our financial area. She has been our lead account clerk for quite a period of time and has done just an excellent job. We're proposing that her current position, the lead account clerk position, her job description be reclassified to that of assistant supervisor in the accounting area. So it allows us to go ahead and maintain all of her knowledge, all of her expertise regarding processes and procedures. She's the individual right now that the line staff go to for various things. She manages a portion of our caseload also in her capacity. And so for her, as I indicated, it's a little bit different than in our enforcement area, where we don't have currently an individual in such a capacity in enforcement. We do have the luxury of having that individual in the finance accounting area. So, as I said, it would be a reclassification that we're proposing whereby she would go from her current grade and step to the proposed grade and step, and this is all documented on the resolution that the Personnel Committee was looking at this morning. So, to I guess, reiterate everything that I just said, everything that we're talking about for the assistant supervisor in enforcement, the additional position of the intergovernmental specialist, which, by the way, would have duties within enforcement and accounting. They would be that specialist person, that go-to person for intergovernmental cases. Those individuals are being funded by the reduction of our management level position within the enforcement division. There's 5 individuals currently, and again, this is on the resolution that you will see that went to the Personnel Committee this morning. Those 5 individuals translate them into the 4 individuals as I've described. I won't go through the placement of the individuals as far as grade level and steps. That's also documented for you. The numbers are on the decision paper on page 2 of that particular document, and it quantifies the cost savings to the county relative to the restructure proposal that we're bringing before you today. So as I said, certainly ready for questions and whatever else that you may have at this point in time.
I think you may have answered the question, although I don't have that document in front of me. What is the impact to this year's budget on the
The
change?
impact of this year's budget, and I apologize, if you don't have that document in front of you, I can reference it here. The impact of this year's budget, by making these changes, if these changes are put in place as proposed, of course, we're in July now, so I'm going to give you an annualization. We have to take 5 months of this number to have impact for the year. But the number is just shy of $42,000. The cost savings by implementing this restructure on an annualized basis would be $42,000 at the current time. Now, I need to mention certainly that with placement, I mean, individuals would have room to move as far as steps are concerned. So as time goes on, as years go on down the road, certainly individuals would move into additional steps on that particular grade scale. But right now, as we sit here today, the annualized amount, cost savings wise, is just shy of $42,000. Now, some of that money, as you well know from my discussion with you in the past, some of that money obviously is recoupable via our reimbursement program that we have with a Friend of the Court funded community grant program on a federal level. But gross numbers wise, because that's what I wanted to do, is keep it at gross numbers. Cost savings to the county annualized is just shy of 42.
Okay, that's 42,000 for this year. Then have you anticipated what impact this will have on next year's budget? On
As I
20?
said, yes, there would be, individuals would be eligible for step increases, assuming, and what we're talking about here is these individuals, none of them, well, one of them, our financial services supervisor, which is what we're proposing for the new name, combining the two current supervisor positions, she would be at the top grade. She would be at the top, the top step of grade 10. So the only impact that would be for that position would be any additional compensation that would be afforded, as Bill has done in the past with, let's say, 2% increases or whatever. The other individuals, there would be an impact based upon the fact that they would be able to move to additional steps on the grade scale. So usually those steps on the non-union compensation grid are 5%. There are 5% increments as individuals move up on the grade scale. So depending upon the compensation, if you take 5% of that compensation, that would be an approximate impact as far as the budget next year.
So is it safe?
We would be in a cost saving situation in 2021.
Okay, is it safe to say that the 42,000 savings this year will be eaten up next year by those step increases?
No.
Okay.
No, we will still have a cost savings next year. The step increases next year will not eat up that amount.
Okay, and we haven't seen it yet. How does this fit into the salary study?
Well, as Shelley indicated, that was a question I think that was asked this morning also in our personnel committee meeting. And right now, as you recall, and I've had this conversation I think previously, you recall that the Friend of the Court was a unionized entity. All of my line level staff were unionized. Effective last year, 12/31, all of our union staff became non-union through a decertification effort that was successful. Upon that, doing that, we then, I sat down with Shelley and we took all of our staff and we repositioned our staff into the non-union grade scale. And I will tell you that where we are at the current time and where we positioned our people at that point in time, I think is going to come very, very close to where the salary study, and again, I don't have any advanced information on that as I understand it. I think there's a meeting tomorrow, right? Where the salary study is going to be delivered. I had, however, Commissioner, an opportunity to talk with Mark Notley personally. We had a long conversation, gosh, probably 3 months ago at least now. And he was just picking my brain about some of the information that I had given him previously. He does have a sense of our positions compared to other positions in other counties. And while I can't tell you what the numbers are going to look like, he did tell me that he felt by looking at where we were and where he was seeing comparables that there would be very little difference between the two.
Okay, great. Thanks, Tom. Are there any questions from any of the committee members?
My only question was exactly yours, Jim. I was gonna, what the impact on particularly next year's budget would be.
Okay, thanks, Chris.
That was answered. Thank you.
If I don't hear anything from Don or Mike, um,
I
I'm
don't have
good.
anything to say, John, just listening in. But most of the questions, I believe, have been asked. I'm kind of like Chris, you're not supposed, some of the things has been asked, has been explained.
great,
So
thanks.
I'm okay with everything.
Okay,
Mr. Chairman.
yes,
Okay, so just bringing the committee up to speed, personnel did review this earlier today. Personnel approved it essentially contingent upon the administration committee also offering a statement of support. Just from a procedural standpoint, this issue has been simmering for several months. Staff was intent on bringing this to the full board depending on how today's meetings went. If this group says, yes, this is ready to proceed to the full board, then between myself and Annette, we'll work with Tom to get it onto tomorrow's meeting agenda.
okay, normally, when we have these in writing, there's a space on the resolution for your signature and corporate counsel's signature. Have you affixed your signature to this resolution, even though it's not ours?
Yes.
Okay, all right, that's great. And unless any of the other committee members see anything different, in my opinion, that, yeah, we give our blessings to this, and PHSC will introduce this resolution tomorrow. Everybody good with that?
I agree, yes.
I'm fine. Or do we have to vote on it?
No.
Okay, well, I'm okay with where things are then.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Tom. I appreciate the time you took to come and talk to us.
Appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Tom, we'll see you tomorrow.
Very good. 10:30.
Yes, sir.
Okay, next item on the agenda is, I assume from Carrie, is that why you're here? Court facility?
It is, yes.
And you're up. Welcome, Carrie.
Thank you. I'm also very excited to hear that for Tom's space. I think that's a really great restructuring that probably was much needed. So I look forward to that. So thank you very much. Can you all hear me with this on? It's pretty thin, but just to make sure.
Yeah, I'm okay. I think I can hear you okay. If I can't, you'll see my hand go up.
No worries, just yell at me or something along those
Okay,
lines.
very good.
Okay, so, as all of you I think are aware, I provided an update from the court last week to Brian, who forwarded that on. We are still in phase 2 of a 4-phase reopening plan at the court. That's per the direction of the Michigan Supreme Court and their return to full capacity guide and their administrative orders. So, as a part of that, the history behind this is previously in the COVID pandemic, the Supreme Court had canceled basically the sentencing of all juries and the holding of all jury trials through to June 22nd. We were all kind of in suspense for a period of time to determine how that was going to roll out going forward. And ultimately what they did was earlier this month, they subsequently put into effect an additional administrative order which allows for courts across the state to conduct jury trials in one of 2 phases. The first being in phase 2, which is what we're currently in. That has to be by approval of the state court administrator's office with each jury trial and done with some sort of checklist that they've been providing for us. The second is just blanketly being able to conduct jury trials in phase 3. We've been hoping to be in phase 3 since July 6th. That has not been able to be approved. We do require approval from the health department in order to move into those phases. I don't foresee that changing given the way the numbers have looked the last couple of weeks. And so we're truly looking at, even if we moved into a new phase, it would be phase 3. And I don't see some of this going away at least through the remainder of the year, particularly as it pertains to the courts and the handling of social distancing. So you'll notice on the memo that was provided Jury trials, we have at least at this point in time about 115 felony trials alone that are still pending resolution at this point in time. A good portion of those individuals, and I can't give you an exact percentage, but a good portion of those folks are housed at the jail. They're currently incarcerated. We have about 35 to 40 capital cases that are still pending. Capital cases being those that would be a life offense. And those specifically, the majority of those are still incarcerated awaiting trial. At this point in time, I don't know the exact number of misdemeanor trials that we have kind of on hold, because we just don't, that's scheduled a little bit differently. And quite frankly, we have closing in on 450 probably cases that yet need to be arraigned, which we're still working on trying to sort out in phases 2 and 3. So we have a fair amount of trials left for the rest of the year. We obviously had savings in jury reimbursements for 6 months out of the year. However, because of the fact that we're going to start having jury trials and try to do those in a fairly aggressive manner because of the amount of cases that we have still pending, our calculations, Frank Samsel, who is thankfully for me, because my sanity would probably be lost by now, he's thankfully a jury guru and travels between multiple different states and gives presentations. He's my number cruncher, and based on our previous year's projections, the amount of money that it costs for between misdemeanor trials and then all the way up to a capital trial per trial, we're looking at about $102,000 left of remaining expenditures for the year, with the, as I mentioned, fairly aggressive attempt that we're going to make to get through as many of these as we can in a safe manner. We have about $107,000 left in the jury reimbursement pools for all 3 divisions. So truly most of that is eaten up in jury reimbursement and mileage costs for those jurors. Subsequently, the other issue that we find ourselves in is the fact that social distancing is still a requirement by the CDC, the WHO, and also by the State Court Administrative Office, who just this week came out with a social distancing recommendation for juries specifically, as well as a couple of other memos with regards to virtual jurors and just jury selection and jury maintenance in general. So we've been crunching space in the courthouse for the last month or so, trying to determine a way that we could feasibly house this amount of jurors with the social distancing rules that are in place. I should mention that the Supreme Court had determined that the executive order requiring no more than 10 people in a room or any gathering at a time does not apply to courts because there's a lot of courts that don't even meet that amount. They can only fit maybe even up to 8 people in a courtroom, but there's also courts that can fit quite a few more people in a courtroom and still maintain social distancing. So the Supreme Court, our guidance is to follow basically based on capacity. So the largest courtroom that we have available capacity-wise is 25 individuals. That includes staff, however, and also all the parties present, defendant, prosecution, defense attorney, etc. So we don't have space to house an entire jury panel. Typically on a misdemeanor selection panel, we would require 20 people to come in for selection. That needs to be a 6-person panel. So we go from 20 people down to 6 when we've actually selected a jury. And then on a felon, just a general felony case, not a capital offense, we would call in about 35 jurors. And again, that gets down to 14, which includes 2 alternates. And similarly, on a capital case, it boils down to a 14-person panel, but because of the amount of peremptory challenges, so times where the defense and the prosecution can just blanketly say they don't want that person on the panel, we call in between 55 and 60 jurors at any given time for those cases. So with the large amount of the A, felony trials, and B, specifically capital cases we have this year, we determined we wouldn't be able to manage those, even streaming internally in the courtrooms, while social distancing rules apply. It would become unmanageable. We wouldn't be able to determine where the jurors are, if they were even paying attention, those types of things. So what we started to do was look at the possibility of doing off-site jury selection. A lot of courts are looking at doing this. I can tell you that there's been a couple of courts up in the lower peninsula, Grand Traverse, Petoskey, that have already been doing jury trials, and a couple
off-site. They've selected their panels off-site. They've moved the entire process off-site, including all the parties, the recording, all those things. We would, at this point in time, because of the amount of capital cases and incarcerated defendants that we have, we're trying to work through, not be requesting to move the entire process off-site because of the security concerns that would come with that. What we would be looking to do is to call in jury pools that would be larger than a misdemeanor case to an off-site facility, pick that jury via Polycom. So basically what we're doing right now, they would be in one large room. We would bring in a panel like we would typically today, put them quote unquote in the box. And move them up to be able to be viewed by the Polycom. And then as individuals are released or the defense or the prosecution indicates that they're good to go, then we would just move people back up so they would be able to be seen again on the camera. We've looked at a lot of venues throughout the county, looked at some schools, have looked at the universities, colleges, and all of those places are still under strict restrictions with regards to the executive order and would not be a possibility for us while the 10-person rule is still in effect. What would work is if we are the sole renters, sole tenants of a facility, because it would basically at that point in time become an extension of the court. And we would be able to house up to this max capacity for social distancing in that area. So what was presented to us and what we've determined to be a good idea is the Vineland Center. I'm not sure how many of you are familiar with that here in St. Joe. It used to be the old Rogers Vineland food store. It was turned into a convention and event center, oh gosh, probably 15 years ago or so. And in March of this year, just prior to COVID hitting, they decided that they were not going to be moving forward with any additional events there. They wanted to close that facility for that reason and look at repurposing it. So currently it's sitting vacant. We did do a site visit there last week. Myself, a couple of the judges, Frank Samsel, and our security and IS staff. And we determined that that's actually a very good fit for us. It's a large enough facility where we would be able to house up to a panel of 60 individuals, perhaps even more than that if necessary, and be able to stream that between the courthouse, either here or in Niles if necessary, and in that location, and maintain all of the recordings that we need to do for maintenance of records purposes.
Carrie,
Yes, go ahead.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear. What facility are you thinking of using?
The Vineland Center in St. Joseph.
What is that?
So it was previously Rogers Vineland food store. Back, gosh, when I was little, and I could probably still at some point in time recite the commercial for you, but it's maybe a little dicey now. You probably don't want to hear it. When Rogers moved out into Royalton Township, they subsequently turned that grocery store into an event center, which has been operating for probably about 15 years, and just recently in March determined to close their facilities for events. So they're looking to repurpose it or sell it, but in the meantime it's vacant. It's a very large convention center type situation where there's they used to have weddings there quite frequently. There's bridal suites, restrooms, all of the things that we would need, not necessarily a bridal suite, but the restrooms and facilities would all be things that we would need to house a jury pool. So
Okay, since I'm not familiar with the facility, is it equipped? I mean, because you're talking about doing a lot of virtual, correct? Is it equipped
correct.
for that?
So it's equipped with screens. It is equipped with internet. We had Chris and Braden come out and take a look at the facility with us, and we clearly would need to have a Polycom device that would be there, as well as probably some additional microphones, just because the space is a little bit larger. But it is still equipped with internet. It's still equipped with all of the event center items you would need, so chairs, tables, all that. But we would have some additional technology needs that would come with this. But in a positive note, I believe because of the amount of virtual court we've been doing over the past 5 months, that we would quite frankly need this this technology going forward anyway. So if we weren't using it for jury trials going forward, we would use it for some other virtual court purposes.
Okay, since Chris is present, I assume he wants to weigh in or has at some point is going to weigh in. on his thoughts. Has he reviewed this? And Chris, do you have any thoughts on this?
Yeah, so I was actually going to add what Carrie was saying there. We did go into the site. The site currently has a 30 meg UVerse, AT&T UVerse connection, which we can feed off of. We would bring in mobile equipment. We have to purchase it. Obviously, we don't have it. And I broke it down and presented it to Brian, and certainly could get you the information if you need it as to what we would need to bring in. You're looking at a Polycom device, some network equipment, firewall, so that we can VPN that facility back to our network. We could even set up a phone on site so they have, they're connected to the county phone system. So we've tried to take all those needs that they would have and put them in a package that could be brought in and moved. You know, if we need to pull it out and go somewhere else, we have mobile carts and other items that we purchased as well.
And these are all secure connections then?
Yeah, it'll be, we're purchasing a Sonic Wall VPN firewall, which will be encrypted, connected back to our network. We use the Sonic Wall on the front end of our network. So certainly that, you know, security is going to be a big thing.
Good. Okay. A ballpark figure, because I don't think I've seen that document. What's it going to cost?
So I had, oh, go ahead.
Is that a Gary question? Or is that a Chris question?
From the IT side, you're looking at, I had numbers for an exact quote for $16,446. I would ask that we budget a little bit extra if there's anything unforeseen, you know, around 20, just in case. But I mean, hard numbers, that's where I came in from my vendors.
And you did say 20,000, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
For IT side. Now Carrie obviously is going to have her cost, but.
Okay.
Right, so the rental of the Vineland Center that we've been quoted at would be $8,000 a month. Believe me, I tried to talk him down, but it's mostly for him to cover the cost of his mortgage and taxes and things along those lines. Then we would have the additional technology needs, which are listed there. I did speak to the sheriff, and they are willing to provide a part-time sheriff's deputy to help us conduct screenings for jurors, which would include wanding them and ensuring that, again, there's no temperatures, they have no COVID like symptoms. And so I did include some funds for that of about $7,000 to cover 3 days per week for about 4 months. So our total request from contingency would be $59,000 at this point in time, and that's including the technology costs that Chris cited with some spare in case of any unknowns. And I should mention, we have not yet discussed this option with the parties because I quite frankly didn't want to discuss this with the defense or the prosecution until we determined that this was a fully baked and approved idea. So we had some place to go with it. We're kind of at this point in time balancing a couple different things. One, the social distancing requirements, and two, the constitutional right of a defendant to a speedy trial. You know, I'm quite frankly surprised we've had a lot of bond reduction motions for these individuals to date, but I'm honestly surprised we haven't had a request to have a more expedient jury trial than we have to date. We will. I can tell you that we have enough folks sitting at the jail that should have already been tried by now, and quite frankly, on bond, who should have already been tried by now, who need resolution to their cases. That we're going to start seeing these requests. The concern that we have is that we just cannot house the amount of people that it would require to have a felony case in the buildings, either Niles or St. Joseph. There's a little bit more space to operate within Niles just based on the atrium, but that's not particularly secure in that location, the atrium itself, to keep jurors from overall distractions. There's a lot of components to that in both locations. And so for us, this is kind of the best of both worlds. The Supreme Court, to give you a little bit more background, also had a remote jury trial project that was conducted. Actually, Judge Howard was a part of that task force. Their recommendations also came out on Monday. They did a mock trial with volunteers from jury selection all the way through to deliberations in June. The only thing that they're truly supportive of at this point in time, and that's the worst case scenario, that was jurors sitting at home on their phones or their laptops, zooming in individually, kind of looking even worse than the Brady Bunch effect that we quite frequently see on a lot of our Zoom meetings. But, multiple jurors on these pools at home from Zoom with dicey connections and, not even some folks not even having good Wi-Fi. The only thing that they supported out of a remote jury trial was selection. So to the people that I've discussed this with, both at SCAO and also Judge Howard, who was on the committee, this is kind of a happy medium. It's not the jury members direct, or the entire jury pool in front of all of the parties, but they are available via live stream for selection only. We would not be asking, I just want to make sure I'm clarifying, we would not be asking to conduct the entire trial offsite. This would strictly be for selection. We would bring the panels back to the courthouse, either in St. Joseph or Niles, for all of the trials, for all of the witnesses, the deliberations, all those things. And we do have the ability to socially distance that amount of people in the courtroom on top of the parties. The area of concern continues to strictly be jury selection on these felony cases. And honestly, like I said before, social distancing requirements being what they are, I don't see that going away. And I know judges Mayfield and Bruce kind of being the two point people as the chief judge and the presiding criminal division really also don't see the social distancing component going away for jurors through the rest of the year. So hence the request to handle these between September and December. And, certainly that's something we may have to look into in the early parts of next year, depending on where the state, the country, the world are at with this pandemic situation.
Hey, Carrie, you mentioned a proposal. Have we seen that proposal? Was it sent to
I
us?
believe it was sent out. It's a memo, basically entitled COVID-19 Jury Selection. If you don't have it, I'm more than happy to resend it.
I would appreciate another one. I mean, I don't know about the
Yes,
other
sir.
committee members. But yeah, I would appreciate seeing that. And then my next question, what do you need from us today?
At this point in time, I would need just approval to move forward in the process. I requested a lease agreement from the Vineland Center, the individuals that operate the facility. And then also we would just need to be able to make sure that those funds are available from contingency. I wish I could pull it from our jury fund. I just don't feel comfortable with the amount of jurors we're trying to call in between now and the end of the year to say that I could rearrange that. So at this point, it's a contingency request.
And you said that would be 8,000 a month?
8,000 a month at the Vineland Center, correct?
How long do you anticipate using this facility?
We are looking at between September and December of this year, so 4 months worth of usage.
Okay.
At this point in time. But again, I only bring up the fact that we're still not really sure where anything's going to be in December. So I hope dearly for everyone's personal, health and sanity that we're back to at least some semblance of normal towards the end of the year. But with the numbers where they are, I just don't know that we're going to get there. So it could be that we have to look into doing this into early parts of next year, but I don't know. At this point in time, we're just requesting till the end of the year until we can get a good feel for this.
Yeah, and that's probably a safe assumption. Okay, anything from the committee members? Any questions?
I have none.
Okay, Carrie, I would appreciate it if you would, if you already sent that information, I apologize, I haven't seen it.
Not a problem.
Resend it, I would appreciate that.
I'm sending it right now.
And one of my standard questions is to the county administrator. You have reviewed this and you approve it?
Members of the committee, I do. It's a really odd circumstance, but as Carrie's pointed out, we're getting, for lack of a better term, logjam. We have people who are waiting for trials. She is taking what I would view as very creative steps to ensure that the court services can continue. She has looked at a variety of other locations and found that this is the most affordable, and it's set up to limit any claims about parking complaints, about ADA complaints, about restroom complaints. I think it's probably the best fit you're going to find, and for the least money.
Okay, thank you, Brian.
Yep.
One last question I guess I have, Carrie, is any of this going to be reimbursable through the CARES Act or any other funding?
I've been looking into some grant options, I think, because because unfortunately the county receives some other funds through CARES that the court may not be eligible for that on CARES, but I have looked at some additional grant opportunities that the State Justice Institute has put out. We've partnered with them before on a consultant for our strategic plan. They're a little bit questionable as to whether or not they approve strictly equipment costs. And so I need to do a little bit further discussion probably with SJI specifically about that before I would be able to apply. But that's probably our best luck, would be something through kind of these larger national grants that are being provided, not through the necessarily federal government. SJI is funded a little bit differently. But I don't think that the court at this point in time can apply for one of the CARES Act grants because of the previous funding that was provided.
Okay, and then where are these funds coming from to take care of this till the end of the year?
That's why I'm asking you for a contingency request. So the two things that you're going to see that are going to come through are obviously the fact that there would be a lease agreement involved in this, and clearly I will, once I receive that, I will run that through. It's always going to be Judge Dwayne to me. So anyway, run that through Judge Dwayne, and then obviously through Brian, and we'll get you that information and Mr. Elliott for signature. And then the other portion of that is it is a contingency request for us because we just don't have any other locations. We've been pulling for technology costs, and Chris can attest to the fact that stuff is dying in the courtrooms right and left. It feels like, since we're using it more than we ever did. And so if I had the money, I would look for it internally. I just don't feel like I'm going to be able to do that.
Okay, again, because I haven't seen the proposal, just doing a rough math, just the lease or the rent alone is going to be 40,000. Chris needs 20, that's 60,000. What do you think the total amount is going to be? And then I'm going to go to the county administrator for, do we have it? And is that where you want to get it from? Go ahead, Carrie.
So at 4 months, because we're looking September through December, I believe we're at 32, that there is some probably additional, well, there is additional expenses I'm sure that will incur. I don't 100% know what that's going to be with regards to utilities. They're giving us a $200 credit per month at this point in time, so I'm still in the process of reviewing their prior bills. But with the technology needs and then the request on the sheriff's part, so I'm kind of asking for 3 different groups worth of things: 1 technology, 1 rental, and the 3rd sheriff's deputy. If I'm requesting 59,000, and then with regards to contingency, I'll let Brian discuss that.
Members of the committee, as soon as we've got a firmer budget nailed down, I'll be working through finance to put together a position paper for the full board's consideration. I would anticipate that probably middle of August, I'll be bringing this back for additional review and consideration. Yeah, you've got cash and contingency that you can draw down. The question that really remains is, how much of a hit are we taking from the COVID situation? So there is cash there today to do this. It is something that, without a doubt, if we take no action, it's going to be unacceptable. There are growing numbers of cases that have to go through some type of adjudication process. We are not in a position where we can just sit on our hands. There are, I think, as of last week, roughly 80 trials that need to occur.
That's strictly on what I'll refer to as a basic felony alone. So truly, we're up to about 115 to 120 felonies, including those capital cases that are separated out. Yeah. So, and that's felonies alone. Again, misdemeanor selections, which we can handle those at the courthouse with social distancing. So those I'm not as concerned about when it comes to moving those off-site. We can handle that. It's these felony selection pools that are larger. But that, again, that's still almost 120 cases. And quite honestly, some unknowns that should have been reigned over the last 3-4 months, that they start off in district, but they always move to felonies. Well, not always, but most frequently. And truly, we've seen a very large number of preliminary examination evidence this year, based on different representation for the public defender's office, which is great. It's just a matter of additional cases that will most likely be looking at going to trial this year as well.
Okay, you used the September month. Is it gonna take 6 weeks or so to get everything set up to begin in September? Is that why you're saying that?
Yes, partially, because and also, I should have mentioned is, we had previously canceled at the direction of the Supreme Court all of our jury pools. And so we won't have a pool available even until the week of August 17th. We're gonna start with some misdemeanors just to make sure that we have this down okay before we move into these larger pools where we're bringing people in A, larger amounts and B, offsite. So, that's one reason. The other reason is just technology and supply chain. I think we need to make sure that our polygon's available in that amount of time. And it does give us a little, like I said, good practice run up front, in the courthouse facility first.
Just out of curiosity, we can't be the only one backlogging. What are some of the other counties doing? Are they doing anything similar to us, or are they just letting them pile up?
Oh, well, we've all been letting them pile up, unfortunately, for a time period because we weren't able to do anything with them. We were not even able to have a jury pool.
And I understand that.
Yeah, but yes, so I think as I mentioned previously, folks in the northern part of the lower peninsula as well as the UP have already started doing some jury trials. One that I'm aware of moved the entire process off-site. That was a civil case. It didn't involve any incarcerated individuals or the sheriff's department in any way. That was at a high school auditorium. A couple other courts that are smaller. So keep in mind, these are like Petoskey. They're just smaller courts and they don't have nearly the caseload size that we do. They were housing them between two courtrooms. That's something we're going to leverage here to a point for our misdemeanor cases. Other courts like Van Buren and I believe Kalamazoo, some other locations are moving everything offsite as well for jury selection, and in some instances they'll just keep the entire jury trial offsite. I don't think that's really something we want to look at here. That's a lot of logistical things, stenographers, additional audio equipment that would be involved, and I'd rather not do that. So people are moving. We're all moving kind of slow because we're the courts and we move slow anyway, but because it's truly unknown territory at this point in time, there's a lot of concern from pretty much every judge in the state that these things are going to get appealed and we'll have to do it again. You know, the bonus with felony cases is that they have an automatic right to appeal on the jury trial anyway. So it would go directly to the Court of Appeals for them to decide whether or not this is an appropriate action for us to be taking. You know, I've been in communication already with SCAO, as I mentioned, about this suggestion. And it's truly, as Brian said, it's really creative thinking that we're trying to make sure we can get these done. And one of the issues, if defendants don't want to have this, or defense counsel or prosecution, is that we may not be able to have their trial until then social distancing is no longer an issue. And I don't know when that's going to be. So we're kind of in the boat of we need to offer them something and we need to get through these cases, and then, you know, to a point they're going to be it'll be up to them as to whether or not they're going to be willing to participate in this.
Yeah, no, and I think it makes sense to start moving things along, and in anticipation of at least, you know, us being in this condition until after November. So I guess I for one give my blessings to what you're proposing, and let the county administrator use his best judgment on the funds. If it is the contingency fund, I'm perfectly fine with that. I'd like to hear from the other committee members. You guys good?
I'm good. I think it's a great idea, actually. It's very creative, and I'm familiar with the facility, and I think it would work out fine. And I understand the need for it.
Thanks,
I'm
Chris.
okay with it.
Thanks, Don.
Okay.
Any comments? Mike Bajeric? He's probably off selling a car. Okay.
Their giveaway.
There you go. Okay. Thank you, Carrie. Do you have anything else for us? Did you want to talk about the RAP grant?
Yes, I believe, and that should be very quick, just so you all are aware, one of the requests that was on the, or that was approved on the capital projects list for this year is the replacement of one of our 2 x-ray machines that are housed at the front of the courthouses for security purposes. We've requested to replace one this year, one next year. As a part of that, we would like to apply for a RAP grant through MMRMA. They do allow for up to $10,000 of reimbursement for court-related security purchases. The total request, let me pull up my other piece of information here, for the total purchase amount with a trade-in on our prior x-ray machine, our current x-ray machine, is I think around $22,000. And so we would be looking at receiving $10,000 of that back in grant from MMRMA. So just requesting to be able to file the grant application, and then once we hear back, we would just obviously again then put forward a resolution to accept the grant and to go ahead and move forward with the purchase.
Okay, and I assume that this is coming out of your capital account?
Yes, it is. Yes,
Okay.
it was previously approved. We have one approved for this year, one approved for next year.
Okay, and so you're talking about one this year, one next year, both at St. Joe?
One in St. Joseph, one in Niles, correct, yeah. And just to give you just a very, very brief background on it, we got these probably about 2008, I believe. I want to even say Joe Zangaro had gotten these as a used version from the nuclear plant. And so these are aging. We've had service out there quite a bit, particularly last year. We were starting to get lines on the screen. It was difficult to really see what was in there. It actually made a couple of things look like they were weapons when they were not. Very clearly not once you actually got in there, but it still made it very difficult for the folks who were up front screening for the sheriff's department to see some of those things. And so they were requesting an upgrade, we're requesting an upgrade, and that's kind of where we're at with that replacement.
Okay, so what you're thinking, or what you're proposing is one for St. Joe this year, one for Niles next year, and then the
Correct.
second one at St. Joe, how old is that one?
They're both the same age. Yeah, they're both around the same age, about 2008, I believe.
Okay, good. All right, anything from the committee members on that, on the RAP grant?
No, I'm okay.
All right, Carrie, thank you very much for coming in. Very.
Thank you.
Thank you again.
Nice to see everybody, even though it's virtually. Hopefully we'll one day get to see each other in person, so.
I hope.
Stay safe, stay healthy, and stay 6 feet
Thank
apart.
you as well.
You say,
Thank you as well.
Okay, next item on the agenda is Administration Center Security / screening. And I assume that's you, Brian?
Yeah, so members of the committee, time flies. And just about a month ago, the committee heard from my predecessor, the interim administrator, Mike Henry, about a proposal to place Roger Lang security at the front desk at the administration building. The Board of Commissioners ultimately approved a $5,000 motion to allow for that security service to begin. Those folks have been working here each day, Monday through Friday, from open to close, and they are screening individuals as they enter the building before doing any type of county business. We are nearing the end of that $5,000 budget allocation. The reason I'm bringing it to this group and then hopefully to the Board of Commissioners tomorrow is with no meeting next month, we don't have a lot of time if the county is desirous of extending that same agreement to the security provider. My recommendation is for a follow-up motion, an additional $5,000 allocation be approved. Each day we have dozens of people going through the front door, and each and every person is being screened and a log is being maintained. For the foreseeable future, that is a service that we're going to have to keep providing, and we just don't have the staff available to provide that service without some type of contractor. Mr. Chairman, does that summarize the situation?
I'm sorry, Brian, did you say Lang Security?
Yep.
Okay, Lang
So
Security
it's
is right now, and we allocated
Yes.
5,000. How long did that 5,000 last for?
Well, we haven't received our first invoice, but just based on loose math, it's 25 an hour. They're doing roughly 40 hours a week, so we should be in the 4,000-ish range.
Okay, and so I'm sorry, what are you asking for? Another 5 or more?
Yep, another 5. I want to keep the number relatively low, just knowing that on a day-to-day basis, the COVID situation could change.
Is there a plan B?
Yeah, it involves me and Annette sitting out front.
Hey, there you go. I like that idea. Anything from the committee members?
I have something to say as Commissioner Don Meeks. I originally voted no on this proposal because it wasn't brought before the board. There's only one I did find. I did check into it, and I got in touch with another security agency to get them registered to do business with the county. Is the person I asked is Rover Security. Lane Security, I did vote yes the second time because we had to have something in place. I did vote on the second one, yes, to agree with the contract, to fulfill the contract for the safety of our employees and basically in the safety of the citizens that's coming in the county. Now, I want to know if this is going to be an ongoing thing. Is it going to go back out for bid? If it is, need to go out and this need to get corrected. So it wasn't done, I don't think, correct the first time. But now we talking about doing it again. Are we going to submit another proposal for somebody to do the same thing? Or are we going to let them do the same thing? But if we don't have time, I can understand. But if we do have time, I like to do things the way things should be done. That meaning that it should be a competitive bid. Now, I'm saying put my 2 cents in, but I can say I call myself correcting it the second time when we needed it. Now it comes out we need it again. But are we going to go back to go through the same steps? Or are we going to correct it? Now, that's basically that's what I got to say. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Don.
Okay.
My question is, during this time that they've been doing, has anybody been turned away from from entering the county administrative building because of COVID signs or anything like that?
Sir, I haven't asked that question. I can contact Mr. Lang and ask the question.
Okay, anything else?
Oh, Mr. Chairman, Annette just pointed out that we have in fact had someone who was refused service, an individual was unwilling to wear a mask into the building, and that person was escorted from the building.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. You can help me out a little bit here, Brian, but if I recall correctly, one of the reasons why we went with Lang was because his people are trained, that they're already working at Lakeland. And do we even have time to send this out for bid right now?
So Mr. Chair, my recommendation is if this committee would like to see bids, my recommendation would be to do 2 things. Number 1 is to recommend Lang be approved for an additional 30 days or roughly $5,000. Secondarily, recommend that a bid package be assembled and released so that as we get into the fall, assuming that a second wave of COVID is likely coming, that we would have bids then ready for the board's consideration. All things being the way they are at this moment, I've got a feeling that more than likely these types of health screenings are going to be a new normal as we get into the fall months.
Okay.
That would be the recommendation.
And I like that recommendation that that'll give us at least 30 days or so until the end of July, till the end of August, to put together a bid proposal, specifications and all that.
Yes.
If we need to. So are you okay with that, Commissioner Meeks?
I'm okay with it. Like I said, I just want to correct the situation if it goes forward, but I can understand we got to do what we can to make our employees safe and the public safe. So that's what's gonna take. I'm in agreement of continuing it, but not continue.
Okay, and I think we hear you. And yeah, I like what the county administrator proposed.
Yes.
Anything else from any of the other committee members?
No, I agree with Don, and I'd like to look at proposals, but I guess we got to move forward on this
Yes.
and go see what happens in the future. But yeah, we should start now so it doesn't come up in August
Mhm.
again.
Okay, thank you, Mike. Okay, I think that sounds like a plan then, Brian, to go ahead and keep Lang for another $5,000. And in the meantime, I guess put together an RFP and throw it out there and get some proposals in anticipation. So that if we're going to need security after August, then at least we'll have some proposals. Does that sound reasonable to you?
Yes, sir.
Okay, very good. And if the committee is all good with that, that's what Brian will do.
Yep.
Okay. Anything else for the committee, Mr. County Commissioner?
We have one resolution that you guys have, it's for the acceptance of the grant from the Hazardous Materials Emergency Preparedness Funds for emergency management in the amount of $2,550. And that is going to be forwarded to the board tomorrow if you guys are all okay with that.
I'm good.
And that is resolution A 2007-296.
That's correct.
Okay. Everybody okay with that?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay, then we'll have those two resolutions on the BOC agenda tomorrow for approval.
You've also got the resolution that's for the full board, as long as we've got you guys here. It was actually started out of personnel because Commissioner Chickering had wanted us to submit our support of the CARES funding for more employees in the county than just those first responders. And so Commissioner Chickering had asked for that to be written. That's also scheduled to go tomorrow for the full board. And so if you guys had any discussion on that, otherwise I would go ahead and add you to this resolution.
Okay, and Annette, I believe that would probably come when everyone has an opportunity to review the agenda and look at all the resolutions that are on there. But I think as far as this committee goes, we've taken care of the two resolutions that we have, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, and we've taken care of security. Is there anything else before this committee?
I just had to check your general public comments.
Okay, thank you. We'll wait on public comment. And while we're waiting, I just want to say what a fine job the clerk has done during this virtual meeting. And the moderator. I know she's got her hands full with all these Zoom meetings. Even though repetition, it still doesn't get any easier.
Okay, I've asked 3 times. You have 3 people watching the meeting, and it doesn't appear as though we have any public comments.
Okay, thank you, Annette. Anything else for us, Brian?
No, sir. We are rolling back the engagement of the various committees. So between myself and Annette, we will be working with the various committee chairs to figure out a more standard schedule. So I'll be following up with Jim to make sure that we have a more standard approach for the administrative committee. and the others. So you'll be seeing some communication coming soon.
Okay, appreciate that, Brian, because I don't think anybody thought back in March that we were still going to be doing this in July. And so going forward, we might as well prepare. So I appreciate that very much.
No problem.
There's nothing else before this committee. We are adjourned.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Do a roll call
Do you want a roll call?
to adjourn the meeting.
Sure.
I'll
Hugo,
make the motion.
I'm sorry.
Okay, well, I'll make the motion that we adjourn. Okay. Is that a good enough for
In a
that?
second?
I support.
All right. And Curran,
Yes.
Majerick. Oh, he already.
You might have that already.
He gone.
Hugel
Yes.
and Meeks.
Yes.
All right, we're adjourned at 2:13.
Thank you, Jennifer.
Okay.
Thank
well,
you, Ned.
everybody be safe.
You too.